All right, I think I'm on and you're on.
Should be.
Check, check. Yep, I'm on. Just you go quick check, check.
Check.
Yep, you're on. Sweet. Cool. G'day, guys. It's Wednesday. It's PowerShell
Uh,
101 with Michael and Christian.
again,
Yeah,
did you miss
again.
us?
So today we'll just be part 9 of a series. What we're going to be doing today is going through all the ins and outs of our function again. We need a bit of code cleanup.
A lot
Um,
of code cleanup.
yeah, we
I
need a bit of
well, I
code.
wasn't too sure what was required.
Yeah. It's all good. I was supposed to do a stream on Saturday, but I couldn't actually get to it because I had other commitments I needed to do, so it just wasn't going to happen that day, unfortunately. But today, basically, we're back. So what we're going to do is just be continuing on with the code. We'll basically continue building the Azure function, and hopefully today we can start on the start on the receive commandlet in PowerShell for the client. So we've obviously have start remote PS job, so we're going to actually use a receive actually we're going to do a get PS remote job, which will also have receive inside it as well. So I think that's pretty much about it. So what's been happening at TAFE lately, mate?
Um, More tests. We had a fun one. Great
Yeah.
questions in it.
Mm,
Absolutely love some of the questions.
mm.
Like name 4 OH&S tips for the IT workplace. Sorry, I forgot. Common sense OH&S tips.
Oh man, that so there's no such thing as common sense.
Yeah, well, I kind of said as much and said you need to reword the question because the OH&S Act exists because there's no common sense.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's 100% true. Because it's like, you have to bend with your legs because someone busted their back. Yeah, we always have to move to this society's lowest common denominator. What else has been happening in terms of like course material and
Well, we've been thrown into the deep end a bit with one of the assignments we've been given. It's more of a continuation on from the server cluster, so we're
yeah,
virtualizing a case study we've been given, and it's our first interaction with Fedora or a
yeah,
Linux-based operating
Fedora,
system,
yep.
and they've given us a guide on how to work it. They say you configure it, but they haven't actually updated the guide for Fedora 30,
Oh, it's
which is the
new
most
OS,
recent one,
yep.
and so the guide's for Fedora 29.
Man, Fedora 29.
Fun and games.
I remember working with Fedora and Fedora 6. That's like, jeez.
Well, um, so far I can't even connect to the internet. It's just how I'm tearing my hair out over
Mm.
it. Even the teachers can't help me because they got no idea. It's just um, seems to be a poorly thought out assignment to throw students in the deep end with Linux.
Oh, okay. I just find it interesting that they're throwing you guys in Linux because back in the day with it was mainly MS shops, so I was kind
Well,
of
that from what I understand is they've actually changed it recently.
they gonna throw a
So
bit more
that
Linux in it.
there's a lot more Linux now.
It's probably because basically a lot more people coming in with MS skills. Like predominantly, I'm 100% MS. Like I don't really deal with Linux at all. Like when it comes to um like obviously it makes better sense to get students versed in both technologies, but it's kind of funny though because one of my colleagues, Alex Laurie, like really down to heart, he's a Linux guy, but he's obviously versed in MS technologies. And it's kind of you generally like it's kind of funny because you generally just find most people are either one or the other. Like
Yeah.
they're either more stronger in MS or in
Well,
like for me, I'm just like 100%. Like I don't particularly really want to have to deal with that kind of like I just like yeah, like at the end of the day though, I can deploy PowerShell and do all those kinds of things. But at the end of the day, I'm like it. The biggest problem is that it's like there's so much diversity out there. You just don't really like you can't be across everything now. It's better to specialize and then focus on that specific.
well, yeah, I agree. But the other problem is once again, um, like with the labs they had us do with
Hmm.
Server 2012, where they just threw us into the GUI.
Hmm.
First step after installing Fedora, install the GUI.
Yeah, because yep, it all
So
comes.
again, it's a bugbear of mine that, from what I hear, a lot of server management is done through server core, and yet they only teach the GUI.
The reason why is mainly because they need you to get a familiarity with the actual core concepts. So, like a good example is, think of Active Directory. Um, Teaching you Active Directory from a command line perspective is significantly more difficult than to actually give you a GUI and you can actually see, an 80s structure. You can see your group policies.
Well, yeah, I can understand that
But
aspect of it. It's great to do that,
hmm,
but how are you going to translate those skills of point and click
hmm.
over to industry?
So in terms of industry, a lot of it's still GUI based. I like obviously this is PowerShell. I write pretty much like I wouldn't say all of it because I generally work in C Sharp as well, in JavaScript. Uh, but basically, you're looking at like the way I see it is it's usually like um, I get I like I will like I also grew up with DOS. Okay, my father taught me DOS. So I have a really good understanding of how to get around a command, like command windows. That's like my bread and butter.
Yeah.
But the thing is though, like without, for example, me fully understanding how Active Directory works, being able to actually go to a command line, something as complicated as even as Exchange or something like that, is really difficult to manage from a command line if you don't understand where you're coming from. So, for example, if you know that you've got a database availability group, you've got and a DAG, what we call DAGs, then you have mailboxes and things like that. And you can actually see it and you know how to do things with it. It makes sense. But if you're trying to do it from a command line's perspective, it's a little bit more difficult. But that said, I do run server core internal at home here. My internal Plex server runs server core. And the reason why I run server core is because one, I can like again my bread and butter is command line, and I can get around quite easily for what I need to do. And two, um, it consumes significantly less memory. And that's one of the biggest advantages of running server core is that I can run, I can run it at minimum 512 gig of RAM, 512 mega RAM, and then have it dynamically set so it'll go from 512 to 4 gig if needed, but it'll sit there and do absolutely nothing. So it's really like from a conceptualization point of view, it's really good to understand it. But then basically, like in industry standard, you're right. Like there are times when you need to, you need to have a good understanding of it. But the thing is, though, like for example, with you learning PowerShell, that's going to be your bread and butter. You might not specialize in PowerShell, but like me, like DOS is like completely gone. But I'm very comfortable in any old school command line. It's and as well as I'm very comfortable in PowerShell. So um, I can kind of back and forth it. But at the end of the day, that's going to be your bread and butter. It's going to be PowerShell. So and
Well,
you
that's the end goal
well,
anyway.
exactly right. And if you choose to specialize in PowerShell, that's your decision. But at the end of the day, though, it's whatever. So let's get started and we'll see how we go. So let's go back to the scene screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, so we're just gonna need a quick code cleanup. So what I'm gonna do is just gonna move some of these functions around because they need to be cleaned up. Oh, excuse me. Oh man, I'm tired. Bob was not a happy camper last night. I think she's teething at the moment, so
Ah, yes.
she's in the screaming locker. Okay, so what we can do is we can just put our functions in up here. Um, Parameter sets using that. Yep. We got test property. Okay, now we're just going to do an initialize code. I generally put something like as an initialize or something like that so I can kind of get a bit of an idea of what's going on in terms of usually under initialize I'm doing some sort of validation, things like that. Um, so in this instance we're just validating the object. Get the GUID. Sorry, I'm just kind of
Oh, can you stop yawning? You're
Yeah,
making me
sorry,
yawn
mate.
too.
Sorry, mate. um, so we're just gonna do some of that. I am gonna get this SQL sorted. I just need to pull my finger out and get it done. So SQL response. Yep, unexpected error. So it's can't one. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do there is I'm gonna clean this up. Easiest way to do that. So one of the things that we can do. So here you can see how, and this is just from a logic perspective. We're inside a try state, a try
Yep.
catch. So remember when we got a try catch, we have try do something. If it errors, do something here.
Yeah.
Okay, so from a logic perspective, in these instances we've got our invoke. So we invoked our SQL query. So I'm just going to actually put a quick little comment in there.
Well, that's not what that line above try is for.
Invoke SQL query out to database. It's more of a header. So like when you see to the database. Ooh. Just need to clarify that. Okay, so we've invoked a SQL query, done all that. Sorry, I'm just gonna, give me 2 secs. Just wanna make sure the chat's working. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's live. I just wanna make sure that looks like we're actually broadcasting.
We are half an hour earlier than last week.
Yeah, I think it's just that. Yeah, exactly right. People generally don't. Yeah, okay, that's fine. So what we can do is here, so we can basically invoke the SQL query, get the request, and validate the response. So that actually provides a bit more context as a
Okay,
header.
so that's where you will state
Exactly each thing.
Yep.
So what I generally do is, yeah, that's how I generally lay my commenting out. It just makes it a little bit easier too. Like for me anyway. Like I hope other people find the same issue. So let's see how we've got, okay, testimony results there are, we've got the counts equal to 0.
Yep.
We know that there's no results. So rather than actually, oh man, just smashed my chair. Rather than actually saying, sorry, I'm just gonna close that down. Rather than actually saying, let's, put a bad statement, bad statement, bad statement, we could actually just do a throw. What a throw will do is inside a try statement is exactly what it will do. It'll throw a terminating error. But because it's inside the try block, what do you think it's going to do?
Well, it's going to try it. So
when you throw,
it'll throw it down to the catch
exactly.
statement.
So remember, this is catching a terminating error.
Yep.
Throw is a terminating error. If I do a write error, that's not gonna get caught. I have to throw. So throw is like the big one. Like that's when you see throw, you're throwing something big. So in this instance, we can actually throw and then put our custom response in here, so we can actually say, No results found. Um,
So for that, is throw just the short form of throw error?
I don't even know what it's short for. I'm actually.
Well, it's just I noticed when you were typing out, it came up with throw error under the tab.
Does it? Oh, there you go. I never actually ever knew that. I actually just learned something. Thanks, mate. It must be actually. Let me get alias because I didn't actually think that was the case. Get alias. So I always thought throw was. Yeah, it causes a terminating error. No, it's short for throw.
Hmm.
There you go. Throwing a string. You can throw objects. You
So
know the
then,
one thing it can't throw? A ball. Sorry. I understand if you want to leave. G'day, by the way.
you sure it's not going to throw a
And
tantrum?
he's gone.
You sure that wasn't us?
Yeah, no, that wasn't. There was two on, and then it went to one.
Oh dear.
Yeah, that's fine.
Look what you've done.
Yeah,
You're scared away the audience.
that's scared away our only mate. Using throw to create a mandatory parameter. Yeah, yep.
So then, what would the difference between throw and throw error be? I guess. Surely there wouldn't be any difference.
I think that's getting confused. Because I've never heard of a throw error. Doesn't exist.
Hmm.
Yeah, one way you can test. Doesn't exist. That's fine. Anyway, so results 0, and we're just going to say no results found. We don't need to do anything below that because it's throwing a terminating error, which means it'll get caught down there.
And then same thing there. You'd just put throw too many results.
Yep. And we know that this is our 1, and we can basically then start filtering our response. So is equal to 1. So what we can do here is we've got our SQL response, and we can actually format it. So what we can do here is we can actually define our response body as what we're going to need to do is, if I remember what we're doing is select for XML computer name GUID. So what we need is the GUID, computer name, and the status. And what I mean by that is we want to respond back with the GUID,
Yep.
the computer name that we're targeted, and the status of the output. Now, if what we can do here, and this is something we can actually do after here, and this is actually really cool, is we can go, alright, we can go, okay, so remember what this is? What response body is?
Response bot is the thing we're sending back to the.
No, what I mean, what type? What is it? Like, what are we using in terms of what type is it?
Oh, it's hash table at the moment.
Yep. Sweet. Okay, cool. So what we're gonna do is go
I'm
computer
learning.
name. Yep. No, that's good. That's the main thing. We're gonna go GUID. I'm gonna order it. We're gonna get GUID computer name. I'm not going to go computer name target. I'm just going to go computer name because it just sounds a little bit easier. And then I'm going to go status, like so. And so what we can do here is we can go, so we can capture a response. So we can go SQL params.guid.
Yep.
That's going to return the item back, like so. And then we're going to go SQL params. Oh, hang on. No. We're going to get SQL response dot GUID, SQL response dot computer name target, and then we're going to go status This is something really cool. So this is just like when I'm talking about logic flow.
Yeah.
This kind of comes down to how you do your logic flow in terms of um, creating better code, easier to manage code, and I'll show you what I mean. So rather than having to write any sort of crazy contraption to deal with, so rather than having to write copious amounts of code, we can actually simplify a lot of our code in terms of whether there was actually a response. Hang on, we selected input XML. It's not even going to be the case. It's going to be an output XML. The reason why is because we're going to be sending the data in.
Output put or output put. So a couple of typos in there.
Output XML. The only reason why, remember, because the reason why I'm saying that is because you have an input. G'day. Hope you stick around. We're just talking about PowerShell and how we love it. No, so
Better than Fedora.
Well, if you can install PowerShell core on it, you got me. Anyway, so you have the output XML, input XML.
Yep.
So if we actually remember, you know how we're saying we want to send data to, like we actually want to send a PowerShell request to our remote endpoint. That PowerShell request that we're sending to our remote endpoint, that's an input.
Yep.
That's the PowerShell we want the other side to execute. But if we said input XML, we would actually just be getting the input code. But we don't want the input code, we want the output code. So that's the reason why I'm saying output XML, because there'll be a separate column in the database that will be specifically for that response. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah, so it's just basically, like, it's just a bug I just saw right there, and I was thinking, oh wait, we better fix that.
Well, yeah.
So yeah, so one of the things I was saying is that basically, we're obviously crafting the response body, and one of the things that he's gone. One of the things that we want to be able to do is manage an effective response, but not have to use ridiculous amounts of code. Now, we need to test. The next thing we need to do is verify what kind of status it is. So in this instance, what we have here is we have our status response. Okay. So our status response is sorry, actually not a status response. It's going to be was the job completed? So what we can do is we can actually go is response body dot status is equal to, what are we going to put in here?
Well, completed.
Completed. And then what we can do here, this is where I love, like, this is the way I do my PowerShell formatting. If we know the status is completed, then all we need to do is tack the output onto the end. So what we can do here is go response body dot, what do you reckon we're going to do now? So we're going to tack it on the end. We're going to tack it to that. We're going to append it to that.
It's not going to be. No, that wouldn't make sense to say response body.
It's add.
Response body add, right?
Yeah. So what we're doing is we're adding a variable. We're adding a variable. We're adding an additional key value. So the add method. Remember this is a method. The add method basically goes, and the only reason why I know this is because I use it like religiously, off by heart. So I go key value, and they're just denoted as strings. So what we can do here is we can add, what we can respond with is output XML, output, and then we can go SQL response
dot output XML.
Exactly. And that makes it so much cleaner. Like, look how clean that is.
Yep.
Like, it's so much easier to do it that way than I think. Now, the only reason why I did it that way, like, hypothetically, I actually could just do it, like, chuck the additional item in there, but it would come back null. But the only reason why I'm doing it this way is because like, if there is an output, let's present it. But if there's not, let's not. This is actually another thing. Like maybe what we should actually also do something here. We're going to actually add a sub expression, and a sub expression is basically you can run code inside a code. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go if so a sub expression is denoted by a dollar open parentheses.
Well, in a method.
Yeah, it's basically just saying I'm a method, yeah, in essence. So you got SQL response.output XML.
Yep.
And then from there, if I go is, let's say, we want to test whether it's null or empty. What do you reckon the easiest way to do that is?
If
Again,
it's null or empty,
yeah.
it equals to null.
Well, exactly. Oh, actually, no. This is one of the biggest things is null and empty are two different types.
Well, yeah, you've got equal to null and equal to, well, 0.
It'll just be double quote. So in essence, it would just be this. That basically says I'm an empty string. Or you can make it look neater. So I'm going to use the string type.
Yep.
Is null or empty method.
Oh god.
And I'm just going to use that. And look how neat it is. Like it just.
Oh yeah, that makes it so much easier to read.
Exactly. So you know, is it null or empty? And if it is, we actually can just do a we can actually do write output. We're gonna actually just gonna convert. So even if it's empty, we'll convert it to null.
Yep.
So what that basically means, okay, if it's null, it's null. But if it's empty, it will become null. So I could actually I could have just done if SQL response output.xml equals empty string. But me being me, I like to make things look neat. Now, interestingly enough, when you're doing sub expressions within PowerShell, one of the biggest things is that when you know how I don't know if you really did much. Actually, no, we haven't really done much in terms of functions. So functions basically have they follow a general principle where they basically have. I'll just quickly go up here and I'll use this as an example. Test object property. You denote the function name.
Yep.
You denote your parameters, or you denote it inside the parentheses. What I mean by inside that'll basically like your methods and classes.
Yep.
You do a whole bunch of your code, and you either do a write output or return. Sub expressions are exactly the same. However, there is one difference: is that sub expressions cannot use a return; they can only use a write output. So I don't know why. It's something that I've always wanted to know why, but that's something that you need to know is that when using a sub expression, you need to use a write output and not a return. So what we can do here is now we can just do an else, and then I can go write output, and then we're going to go, if I can actually get my IntelliSense to output XML, and that will give us a nice body response either of null or not, and it makes me very happy because it's formatted nicely. I'm just going to space these tabs out because
Where does the second parentheses come from?
Which second parentheses?
Well,
so you got this one, which is obviously you can see the highlight up the top.
Ah, right. Okay,
and then you got the second one, which is the add. So to be honest, what I could do.
Sorry, no, that's all I was curious about because I thought there was one too many.
That's how I generally lay my stuff out because it just for me it's about readability and about like ease of use. Like it really depends on whoever like is reading it and whether they find it interesting or not. But most of the time, I'm generally like that's how I write my code. I'll try and if like, don't try and use sub expressions when they're not really designed to be used. So a good example is that's an excellent candidate for a sub expression because we're only evaluating a single value. So we're only doing, is it null or empty? If it's not, do this or do this. So you're either writing one or the other. That's really it.
Yep.
If you're basically doing a something really complicated, like you're calling another like something really difficult, stick it in a function because that's really the anticipate. Like that's really where it's really designed to go. So if you're basically going the other way, like if you can imagine if you try and put that in a sub expression, you just got this huge block of code and then basically affecting readability. And the last thing I want to have to do is basically debug a function inside a sub expression because that's just something that you're going to lose track of what's happening because it's just too complicated. It's too convoluted. So it's really just designed for those single kind of statements. All right, so you can see there, that's pretty much that. We've got our nice response and we're pretty much done. So now what we have is, I'm actually going to need to clean that database. So I'll get that database done. I am going to do a stream on Saturday. Oh no, I can't. I'm going to do a stream on Friday and I'm going to get that sorted so that basically come next week we can actually start running pushes and pulls, and we can actually just edit the data directly in the database to test our responses and then see how we go. So the next thing what we need to do is we actually need to craft our response. So basically that's pretty much all we really needed to do. So we've carried out SQL lookup. Yep, GUID exists.
Returning the information, which would be under the main section that I'll put the question mark on.
Yeah. So what we can do now,
that should be right up the top.
I'm just going to
right?
move that up the top. Yeah, I'm just going to whack it up the top because it's just we can clean it up later. It's not the end of the world. So what we can do now is I'm going to move this code down because this is main code. This is, oh, we've got two mains. Okay, that's fine. So what we can do now, we're just going to move some code around. So we interact with the query parameters of the body of request. Don't need that. We're going to need a HTTP response status response. Another thing what we're going to need to do here is we're going to need to set the status code. Because if we don't set it here and we set it down there, we're going to overwrite what this is. So it's easier to set it in here. So if we go set HTTP response code, and we can just go status, we know the status is okay. Every other request, every other if statement is throwing.
Yep.
This is the else. Like, to be honest, we could actually, like, if this is the else, we could actually even do this. Like, we don't even need inside an else, to be honest, because those conditions will never ever be met. Like, they will never go past that. They will never, like, the execution will never occur after that. It'll always go down to here.
Yep.
So we could actually clean that up and do that, which means we remove an indentation, and then it makes it look a little neater. You see how now, so we can actually say now, is equal to 1. Format a response. Was the job completed? If so,
So I suppose by that logic, you don't actually need the else statement after the if there either. In the response body.add sub expression.
yes, you kind of do, because basically you need to have that there, because if you like think about the logic, so if I got rid of that, it'll set it to null and then it'll set it to that. So you need to either set no. So I'm either setting it to be null or I'm setting it to be that specific value. Like it's either one or the other. If write output is not a throw, the biggest thing with write output is that it continues execution after it. So if it was a return, yes, 100%. You don't need an else. If it's a write output carries on execution after it. That's really important to remember. Actually, I totally forgot to mention that too. So what that means is that in this instance, if you think about it from a, let's say that that else didn't exist, it would go write output in null, and then it will do a second write output to that, and then you're basically introducing a new bug. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we're going to set our HTTP response code. So what we need to do there is we're just going to grab that, like so. There's our response code.
Copy paste development.
Pretty much, like I'm not really, yeah, I'm not really like I'll just copy and paste it because it's just easier. Like I know that I know it exists. Like sorry, I know what it is, but I'm just like if it's right there, I'm copying and pasting it.
Yeah.
It's just faster. And that's pretty much it. So everything else is that. That's really it.
Wow.
So we've got, so if we have a look at the code, so remember we've got to put out, like we've got to take our, I'm just going to quickly, we just got to take our, we've got to put our logic flow hat on, and this kind of helps us understand how everything's going to tick. So we're using a namespace, we're triggering it from a webhook. So that's basically when we do our get.
Yep.
We're basically going to be triggering it from a get. We're going to be invoking an SQL query. Sorry, no, we're basically loading these functions into memory. So we're not calling them, we're just loading them into memory. Basically loading this function into memory to test the object property in the Invoke SQL query. We're initializing the code. Get rid of that.
I suppose you can get rid of that region there as well.
You don't need the region, yeah, that's right. So we're going to initialize the code, but first thing we need to validate it. So we're going to do our test object property. We're testing whether the request.query has the property of GUID. If it does, we're okay. If it doesn't, we've got an issue. So log that error. So obviously, what we're testing on the fact is that it's going to fail. We don't care if whether it succeeds because we're going to, we're going to craft that response.
Yep.
So in this instance, what we're going to do is we're going to log the error. We're just going to write a non-terminating error, and we're going to respond back. The reason why we're writing a non-terminating error is because if I throw a terminating error, they will never get a response back, and then weird things happen on the client side. So we actually wanted to hand it an error back in this instance because we need the client to know that there's something wrong's happened, something bad has happened. And then finally we push out. So we basically are responding back with something's bad. And to be honest, we can actually clean this up even more. And I'm just going to do this. It basically just removing some lines of code that we don't need. Like that still makes sense.
Yep.
So we're just basically building a HTTP response context, the status code, there's your body, return. Pretty straightforward. Once we know that the GUID, once we know the item exists, we're going to need to fetch the GUID.
Yep.
Once we've got the GUID, we can then basically run our select query, which something's whinging there. What's that? Oh yeah, it's because it's sitting in beside a comment block. So we're doing a select output call XML, computer name target GUID status, where GUID is valid to our GUID that we passed into it. Following that, we can then get the request and validate the response. And then we're going to invoke our SQL query. Straightforward using splatting.
Yep.
Following that, we're going to now test our results. So we need to validate how many results are being returned, how they've given us a correct GUID, that kind of thing. So that's why we're testing the count, is the count equals 0. If there's no counts equals 0, what does it mean?
No results found throws an error.
Exactly. If there's, and then we also need to put the shoe on the other foot because we need to
too
validate.
many results, throw an error.
Exactly. So if we're looking for one result, we need to be 100% sure it's one result. So once we've done that, we know that they're gonna throw terminating errors, which will get caught down there. We'll talk about that in a moment. We're going to format our response. So this is the response body that's going to be passed down at the bottom of the in the response. We've basically got our GUID, computer name, status. That's it. With the exception to the status, if it's completed, we're then going to add the output as that.
Okay.
And that's basically just saying if it's null or empty, but we're looking for mainly empty.
Are you going to put a else statement at the end of that?
Where?
Well, you've got if response body.status equals completed. So don't you need an else statement after that
No.
for anything else?
No, because the only reason why we're not adding an else statement is because we only need to process it whether it does exist. So in this instance, if it exists, add to it. If it doesn't, we don't need to do anything else. The only reason why you want to have an else statement is if you want the script to do something else that is explicit in that if. So what I mean by that is, a good example would be this. It's either this or this.
Yep.
If you had that, like the thing is from a return, like from an architecture perspective, we don't need to send anything back. We only just need an if. That's it. Now you can actually with an if else, everyone always thinks you have to have it like an else is mandatory, but it's not. So you can actually say if, and that's it. So that's what we're doing here is we're just doing an if, and then we don't even need to use the else. We're basically saying, well, if it's true, it's true. If it's not,
okay.
So what? Just skip it. So in this instance, we've got our body, a string. We're going to basically say if the string is an empty format the output as null. And so we'll rewrite that response as null, and then response out. And then basically, if it's not, then it'll actually write the correct response. It'll set the status code. To be honest, yeah, that's needed. That's needed. If there's any errors, it'll write a bad request, and then it'll basically saying there's a problem submitting the request.
Okay.
That's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
It'll write the error so that we always have an error. So even these throws, that will get written into an error log there. So that's good. And then from the push output binding, we're going to push that response back. That's it. Done.
Okay.
That's our receive job done. So our next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to pseudocode, which to be honest, we've already got most of the code there. Our actual script. So remember, that was the function. That's running server side. We need to write a client side script to talk to it.
Are we still using the system namespace? Well, the .NET namespace for this?
No.
No? Okay.
No, the only reason why is because this is more client side. And we're actually not referencing any of that. It basically, PowerShell will do it for us automatically, so we don't actually need to worry about any of that. So what we're going to need to do here is, I'm going to create a new file. What do you reckon what do you reckon the command should be called? So we've got a start PS remote job. What do you reckon this one?
Stop.
Nope.
I don't know.
Okay, we're starting it. We should probably do a get. We're getting the PS remote job. Get PS remote job. Yeah.
It's in to receive it.
You this is the thing in traditional PowerShell jobs. So if we actually jump into PowerShell jobs here for a second. Helps with that. Basically, that's a job. When you start a job in PowerShell, basically a job is running its own instance, own compute. It's basically asynchronous. And what you can do using the ID, we can get the job. And you can see information about it, states completed. Now, this is a remote job. I don't particularly want to have to do this because it drives me absolutely bonkers. But you have to pipe it to receive job to get the output. And I really don't want to do that. Like, I just want to be able to go, give me the job. If there's an output, there's an output. I'm happy with that. So what we need to do here is I'm going to get you to drive and you can start pseudocoding it out. Keep in mind, we've got start PS remote job here already. So a lot of our code's already written for us, and literally it's going to be a pretty basic script. It's pretty much going to look exactly the same as this.
So it says start, you type in get.
Well, pretty much, like it's exactly right. Like it's just going to be a slight change. So I'm going to get you to drive, and we're just going to, before we even do that, we're going to sudo out what we need to do. So
Wouldn't it have been easier to put in the?
it would be. It
Right.
would be. I'm lazy.
Okay.
So what we're going to do here is we need to have a think about what we actually wanting to do, because we basically want to do a get PS remote job. So in terms of, we kind of need to think about how we're requesting that information, how we're processing it, how we're sending it, how we're receiving it.
Which was all in
You can
JSON, if I recall.
so you can have a look at this. So this is a good example. You can always use examples. This is start PS remote job. So I think your first thing we'll probably do is build that function, but and then we're using commandlet binding parameters. So we're thinking this is how we're defining our input.
Mm-hmm.
This is our processing. This is our output. So that kind of gives you a bit of an understanding of what we're going to do. So to give you a bit of context, the way that we're going to actually be doing, the way that it's accepting this input is it's using a query string. So rather than basically we're getting it from the body, we're formatting a body, we're actually just going to build this up in the URI. So what I mean by that is, rather than building it out the body, so if we go back to here, you can see we've got the body blah of our invoke REST method. So it's the body of a HTTP request. Rather than doing that, what we're going to do is we're just going to encode it in the URI. So we're just going to go like, not obviously in this example, but we're just going to go that's it. We're not going to do anything else because that's the easier way for us to do it. So I want you to think about now how you would format that input and that. Yeah, and I'll kind of provide a bit of guidance in terms of.
My brain must be fried at the moment. Well, just so I got something to work with.
Yeah, that's a good start. Let's do that, and then we'll go 3 output. To be honest, the output's going to basically be actually output is going to be something. I actually realize. So we got input, process, output. Okay.
Yep.
So input. What are we needing for it? What are we needing from the user?
Oh, we need the request for the.
No, think physically speaking. What does the function require for us to be able to action the request? So think about what are we requiring here? What did we center everything around in this?
Oh, we center HTTP.
No, sorry. So what was the key variable within this? We centered everything around.
Oh, the GUID.
Exactly. That's your input is your GUID.
Comments.
Yeah, that's fine. Like we're just spitballing here. That's fine. Yep. Okay. You've now basically got the first part of your code, all right?
Yep.
Now we need to process that. So when I mean process, what are we going to do? How are we going to action that? Like think about what commandlets we're going to use.
Well, we'll
it'll
command
just
list it now.
FYI, it'll just be invoke REST method. We're going to use that, so you
Okay.
can throw that down. Like I don't expect you to know all the commandlets off by heart because you're just not going to know them until you actually use them quite extensively. So we're going to basically just do an invoke REST method, and how are we going to structure it? Because that's the next thing we're going to do. How are we going to basically
Structure the output.
no, structure the request. So remember, this is the process. We're sending the request. How are we going to structure this request? What's this? So what I mean by that is, let's go back to our command.
So where you've got
got our request. We're basically processing the request. And what are we using?
SQL query.
No, we're using query.
Yeah.
Key value. So what is the query?
So I'm out of it a bit.
Yeah, that's right. Key value there. That's how we're going to structure it. So, how do you think? This is what you see what I mean now? Like how are you going to put the GUID, that input, onto that? That's what I'm like. This is what I'm kind of want you to start thinking about, is how you're going to start connecting all the different bits and pieces together.
Yeah.
So don't think about exact values. Just kind of spitball it. Like you don't have to it doesn't have to be correct.
It doesn't need to be the actual line.
It doesn't have to be actual. It just has to be, logic. Like you have to basically put your logic out.
Invoke REST method. So just so I can understand, what does the invoke REST method actually do?
So invoke REST methods, basically, it's a wrapper for. I'm not going to overcomplicate it for you. What it does is it basically sends, using the REST schema, or the REST API schema, basically it sends specific HTTP requests to URL endpoints with a body, a method, and a header. So I don't want you to think about that. In terms of, so actually I'm going to help you out here, because the first thing you're going to need to do is think about the GUID, and you're going to need to think about the method. They're really your two big ones. So let's worry about the method. The method's going to be get. We're not doing a post, we're doing a get. Why? Because we're getting. Remember how we're going to Google? We're going to Google, we're getting. Same thing, we're getting information. Now the easiest way to get information is using a query value, key value. We can wrap it inside a body and encode it and all that kind of marvel stuff, but it's so simple that all we need is that. That's the one parameter that we require. We don't require anything else, which means that from our URI is basically how we're going to encode everything. So give me 2 seconds for a sec. Give me a second. We also need to specify the URI. I just get you to put URI in there. Is it just me? It's warm in here.
Bit of both. It's a little warm, but I'm kind of used to this temperature.
Oh no, it's gone to sleep. Okay, it's not that. I think Okay. So that's pretty much that. Now I want you to start thinking about. We need to get that output. So we've actually made a bit of a boo-boo here. I think it does it for us automatically. Give me a sec, sorry. Yep. Okay. It'll do us for automatically. So I think it's going to automatically convert it to JSON for us. So I don't think we need to do that, but that's fine. So we are going to get, what are we going to get back? This is the next thing we need to think about. We've invoked our query. We're going to get something back. And we need to filter that response. That's where we're basically the hard part's going to be. So,
Did it again. That one.
okay, you're partially correct there. So you've got to receive a collection of information. It's just going to be an object. We're not receiving more than one object. We're only receiving a single item back. We're getting one, sending one, receiving one.
Okay.
So we're going to basically just get an object. And what are we going to get back from it?
Well, yeah, you mean
well,
what's going to be encased in the object?
Exactly.
Well, that'd be the status, the GUID, and the output CLI XML, computer name target, the same stuff from the received job.
Yep. And what we're going to do here is we're missing a step here between 8 and 9. We need to validate the response. What happens if we get an error? We're looking for that error response tag, remember?
Yep.
So if there's an error, what are we going to do with that? I'm pretty sure that's going to get caught actually. So we're going to deal with that. But it's worth noting. The next part is write out receive an objective information. And we're going to need to format that response. And then finally we have output. And that's pretty much it.
Well, output will just be response.
Well, exactly. No, we're just going to be doing a write output. That's it. All right, that's pretty much it. All right, so let's actually write this code. So what we're going to do here, just going to copy this, paste this. That's our first step. Okay, yep, that's fine. Okay, so we've got what we can do, because I'm like super lazy. Always leave this in. We're always using TLS 1.2, which is encryption. I want you to clean that up. We need to fix that. I'm pretty sure that's going to get right the error there. So what I was thinking is, if we go back up to the top, you can see invoke REST method URI GUID, get command let validate this one. If there's an error,
yep.
I'm pretty sure it'll get caught.
Well, it's not the whole point of the received job side.
Yeah, but what I mean though is that if it's going to do that, from a logic perspective, it'll just get caught here and it'll print it as an error. That's fine.
Yeah.
I think that's fine. Yeah, I think that's fine. I'm going to get you to do this. So we're going to build this URI app. We're going to use your string formatting skills.
My string formatting?
Yep.
Okay.
So, there's different ways of concatenation within strings. Remember how we went through the concatenation? Very, very long time ago?
Yeah,
Okay,
kind of.
that's fine.
That was that for concatenating lines, I think.
Yep, so what we're going to do here is we're going to concatenate GUID and URI together. So, because basically what we want to do is create a key value of those two. So, there's multiple ways you can do it. I'm going to show you the way I do it because, again, it comes down to I like things neat. Neat things make me happy. So I'm going to...
Yes.
One, and then I'm going to go... Actually, that's like that. And then I'm going to format. And then I'm going to go URI. And then I'm going to go GUID. And there's our GUID. That's our URI. Done. Look at that.
Oh, that's beautiful. So the zero question mark is to say whatever the URI is, throw that
the
there.
zero is denoting the URI. This is basically the zero-based array of after the fact. So we're formatting 0, 1, 0, 1.
Okay.
This is a string. That's a physical string. That is physically going to say, so like, I'll show you. So if I go, URI is, let's go, HTTP .com, and GUID is equal to, let's just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, for example. And then I do this. And we call you, oh shit. And we go val. See what it's done?
Oh, yep.
So basically,
exactly what you were showing before.
Exactly what I'm doing. It's basically put that together nicely. It's just an easier way of doing it.
So we need to change the URI there in the camel case?
Nope. Don't need to do any of it.
Okay. So
the reason why is because that's a key that has it. It's not a variable. It's a property. It's a property inside a variable.
That's why you had to change it there, because you were
because
declaring it as a variable.
Exactly. That's the reason why I reset it there. But if I did it here, that would be fine. Then we invoke our query, and then we need to format our response. I think. Let's keep going. We'll keep smashing this out because we've got a little bit longer, and then we're going to try and format the response. Formatting the response. So everything we have is basically pretty much done, but we need to format the response.
Okay.
So PowerShell by default has given us through invoke REST method. Invoke REST method has already converted the response back into an object for us. We don't have to do any of that which is fantastic. So what we have in our job here, we had our response body is our GUID, computer name, and status. And then we added on the response body.
Yep.
So what we do we're going to format our response, and we're just going to grab that code.
And tab it out one line.
There's another way to do this, but I'm just going to do it this way. Yep, response body status. We're just going to say result. Status is equal to completed.
Yep.
We know it's equal
to. So then that would need to be result.add?
No. Remember, the body that we know it exists. Actually, we're assuming that exists, but we know that it exists.
Yep.
So what we're going to do here is we're going to go we're going to go result dot response body, because it already exists. That's already formatted, and we're going to convert it to readable XML. So if we have a look at our start PS remote job initially, PowerShell script convert to base 64. Yep. Yep. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna expect we're working with JSON. So the response body is going to be a base 64 encoded URL.
Yep.
But it's going to be encoded in JSON. Okay. So what we're going to do, this. First thing, we're going to do a sub expression. Why? Because we either have a response body of null or a response body of something. So we're not going to do that. We're going to do this. So, and what I'm doing here is I'm reformatting the response body, because at the moment, if that would come back, it'll just be a really long string of code. We actually want to make it readable.
Yeah.
So we're going to actually format that to be nice. So what we can do here is we're now going to go if result.response body is equal to null. Actually, sorry, is not equal to null. And we actually only
it should never be equal to null because the response body includes the GUID and the status.
Actually reminded me. You're actually is that response body? Ooh. Wah.
Result.status.status.
Hang on. What I'm doing here is I am putting inside a success. So we know it's a success. So what we can do here, start PS job, I can get rid of that. Result dot success
Dot status
equals completed. I really should actually test that, but I'm not, because I'm just can't be bothered doing that today. We can actually use test object property to test for success.
Yep.
If it exists, we know we're good. So we can actually just go dots, and then we go output. You're right, it's output is equal if output is equal. Yep. So then we're saying result.response body. Result.success dot output is not equal to null. Then we're going to say we're going to format it.
base 64 and JSON. Oh, that at least it is on the start.
So we then go right output parentheses. So we're just going to do it right on that line, and then we're going to go that. What's the first thing we're going to need to do?
Convert it from JSON.
Nope. We need to convert it from base 64. It's coming as base 64, then it's JSON. Does it make sense?
So if you pull up the start remote job, it goes the other way. It encodes it as 64 and then into JSON.
Does it? Okay, don't forget about that. That's the entire body.
Yep.
This is we're looking at this. That's just converting it as base 64. That's fine. On the receive side, I want a JSON object back, because if we have, for example, something like get process, we actually get a nice object that we can work with. We can even use CliXML, but for this instance, we're going to use JSON. So when the output's written, it will be encoded in base64, but then the output will be formatted, serialized as JSON.
Okay.
So we'll need to convert it.
So you can go convert from
base64.
Yep.
It's a remember.
And it'll still leave in case so it's serialized as JSON.
It's still serialized. It'll basically take that single string of random characters and then produce a JSON formatted file, a JSON formatted string.
Yep.
And actually just be a string of JSON like that. Then we can take that JSON and then bring it in as a PowerShell object.
Cool.
Yep. So now we can then go right convert from JSON. So pass the output to base64, go convert it from base64 into a JSON string, convert it from a JSON string into a PowerShell object. Now it's in PowerShell goodness, we have a format like a PowerShell output. That's awesome. Like that's really cool. So now what we need to do with the response here is we can then go, okay, what do you reckon this should be?
Right output. Well, it would be the result success output is equal to null. Right output. No response. Well, not no response. Nil output.
Yeah, no output. That's all I know, pretty much. How would we do that? I would actually do something like, because I want it to be an object. I always want it to be an object. So I'm thinking maybe, I love that.
Just the auto-generated.
Just auto-generated. So right output, and then we can just go. Does that look good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's pretty much it in terms of. So we basically caught we caught that string. Now we've taken that string and converted it into something a bit more usable, and we actually convert it to a PowerShell object. Now, I might need to recast it. And what I mean by that is, this is currently type string.
Yep.
Sometimes, and I've found this with other pieces of code, if you try and convert a type string into a PowerShell object, it gets a little bit weird. Like PowerShell can get a bit weird. So what we can do there is we can recast the type as
an object.
PS custom object. Oh. Just cast as a PS object. And what that does is it chases it from a string to an object, and our output will always be an object.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that way you can just, well, your right output is an object.
Yeah, everything that's getting printed out will be an object. There's no like way around it. It will be an object, and that's actually fantastic because yeah, that's pretty much, it'll always cast as that type, so there's no issue there, regardless of whether it's null or whether it's not. If there's any errors, write the error.
And then write output.
Write the output. That's it. That's it. Completely done. We've done our client side now.
Cool.
Yep.
That was far easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, but you can see how, like, so you've had, for example, so if we go back to whiteboard, and go have a look at what we've just done. So we've just done this whole side of the project. So we had our two little Azure functions sitting up in here.
Yep.
So one of them was to basically receive any new job, put it in a database, and then basically the other one was to get any results or any sort of item out of that database and present it back down. That's it. So now we need to write this other side of it, which will basically be a service, which is going to be C#, which will be something that I think what we will do in that instance is I might write that separately because I think it'll just be wasting your time.
C# will go over my head at the moment.
Well, I think we're going to be writing. I'll definitely put this in for the. I'll definitely throw this in as a stream. But I think yeah, C#'s kind of defeating the kind of that yeah, like it's kind of going a little bit past that process. But the main part is that basically we still need to write those two connectors.
Yeah.
So those two connectors will be send a status response or send an update, and the other one will be do you have anything new for me? And that's basically so right now we've done one side of the thing.
Yeah,
and
we've done client side, not
server side. Well, actually, technically we've done server side. What I mean by that is we've done the Azure side of things.
Yeah, we need to go to the queried side.
Exactly. This is now the execution side. Yeah. So that's basically where that is. So, if you guys are just if jumped on and you're following it and you just tuned in, so what we're doing here is we're basically going through a project with Christian, who's actually learning PowerShell. I'm teaching him PowerShell, and the process is basically for us to create a remote execution bot. So basically, we're having a client sending a PowerShell job to a remote machine over the internet that's just capable of receiving that job and then executing that PowerShell and then sending it back. So that's basically what we're doing. I think that's pretty much it for today. Is there anything else you want to add? Or
no, it's been good.
Yeah, I think it's a really good one. I think I'm gonna stream again Saturday.
Friday.
Yeah, Friday. I don't think I'm gonna stream Saturday. I might be able to stream Sunday, but usually I'm playing ROE though. There's some guys I'm playing ROE with in America.
I still haven't bothered re-attempting that game after it's just would not run.
We have a 75% win rate. It's so good. Like we just admittedly when we don't get absolutely murdered in our spawn or something, something like that happens. But like, yeah, it's actually not too bad. But anyway, yeah, like you said, you can't get it to run. You just got to put 10 on there, mate, and you'll just be.
Yeah, no. I'll wait till I get a new computer for that.
Yeah.
Because I won't have a choice.
I think that's exactly right. Like you kind of once drivers, like at the end of the day though, your computer still supports 7 drivers, but if you try and do anything new with a new piece of hardware, only support a drivers of 10. You're just not going to be able to run 7 on it, like period.
Backwards compatibility it.
Oh, you'll be that guy building a VM that basically runs Windows 7 under the hood, and I'll be like.
No, I'll be that guy who builds the VM running Windows 3.1.
And trying to browse to Google. Yeah. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining us. I hope you guys learned something. We definitely did, so it was really good. And yeah, hope to see you guys next time. Anyway, bye for now.
Catch you later.